Good morning. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today, but I wanted to take this opportunity to talk with you as if I was there with you. This is not a video that we staged. This is meant to convey the importance with which I see your work and how I would have talked to you had I been right there with you. The work you're doing is more important for our union than ever before. Why do I say that? Because right today, we're at 7% of the private sector with collective bargaining rights in this country. It's the lowest it's been since 1900. Last year, in 2009, 800,000 union jobs were eliminated across the country, including 30,000 at CWA. That's the worst year ever. The strategy that we have with the CWA Triangle remains more important and more effective than ever. And so as our bargaining power at the table is obviously weakened by the fact that we're part of a labor movement with just 1 in 15 private sector workers organized, we offset that by building political power, by building greater unity among our members on our 4 key issues: our jobs, health care, retirement security, and in many ways, most importantly, our bargaining and organizing rights. The right to join a union, the right to bargain effectively, and getting support from, on the federal, state, and municipal level for those rights. We set those 4 issues in 2006. Many of you were involved in the elections that year that brought us Speaker Pelosi and a Democratic majority in Congress for the first time in years. We continued to work through 2007 in the new Congress and 2008 and in the election in 2008 on those issues. Most of you in this room worked your hearts out, got many other volunteers in the 2008 election. We actually did better than we thought we'd do in terms of electing candidates that were with us on those 4 key issues. And then in the new Congress, we saw the worst resistance ever in the Senate, unfortunately, from the Republican Party against all 4 of our key issues. We overcame some of that resistance and passed the first major health care reform since Medicare 45 years ago. We passed health care reform because of your work. And because of your work, we eliminated 85% of the excise tax that would have put incredible pressure and probably broken the backs of many of our health care plans, because CWA plans were above the original threshold and would have been taxed in the first year. But as a result of the linkage between our electoral and political work and our legislative work and the mobilization of tens of thousands of CWAers, there's no excise tax till 2018, and even then, it will affect only some of our plans and to a much lesser extent. The Employee Free Choice Act has probably been our #1 priority since as far back as 1992, when CWA's Executive Board first adopted it. In January, when Scott Brown won the Massachusetts special election, we dropped to 59 Democrats and every Republican solidly against putting it even on the floor. We have the only democracy in the world where to pass a bill, you not only have to take it through 2 houses, the House and the Senate, and get a president who will sign it, but in the Senate you need 60% of those voting to even put the measure on the floor. It wasn't always that way, but that's the way it is now. And Senate Republicans have made it a party caucus issue that they will not support workers' rights. So right now, there is no path to passage of the Employee Free Choice Act. This will make your work harder. Our members will say, look how hard we worked in 2008. Our #1 issue is to bring the United States into the 21st century, where all the other global democracies are, where workers can join a union without this kind of intimidation and fear, where we have bargaining rights, where people can negotiate first contracts, instead of what we face now at companies like Comcast, where the negotiation drags on until they can desert the union. And the Comcast example is typical. It's not unusual. And not only did the Chamber of Commerce succeed in getting every Republican to say we won't even vote to allow that discussion on the floor, but they've picked off at least one Democrat, Senator Blanche Lincoln from Arkansas, who's up for election this year. And I couldn't be prouder of our members in Arkansas when they came to me and to Vice President Milburn and said, we need to take a chance because we need a change. We need a primary candidate who will take on Blanche Lincoln, who will stand up for working families. And even though this is her third term as senator, and it's really hard to beat an incumbent, our members said to me, we want to go with Bill Halter, the lieutenant governor. Bill Halter led the successful campaign to establish a state lottery so that our kids could have free higher education in Arkansas. Bill Halter is with us. He wants to run, but he needs our support to run. He needs the support of the labor movement. He needs the support of our progressive allies. And so, led by our members in Arkansas in District 6, CWA has made this a major national priority because our electoral work is not about one party. It's about those 4 issues and other issues that are vital for working families. And when elected officials turn on those values and sign up for the Chamber of Commerce, Blanche Lincoln got $5 million, largely because of her steadfast opposition to employee free choice or to any compromise that was meaningful. Again, not just to the bill, but to putting it on the floor of the U.S. Senate. She stood with the Chamber of Commerce and said, I will block that. And now it's critical that we send a message, not just to her. And that primary is coming up in only two weeks, on May 18th. But that we send a message that we're not in the pocket of any party, that we stand for working families, for CWAers, for our allies, for our friends and neighbors, that we're ready to stand up to Wall Street, we're ready to stand up to the Chamber of Commerce, and we will stand up to elected officials who are on their side and not our side. So as we come to 2010, on the one hand, we want to celebrate our victories, not only health care, but we now have the best National Labor Relations Board ever. And 141 members of Congress, thanks to your work, signed a letter saying to the President, we get it that there's no majority, there's not 60 votes in the Senate for Mark Pierce and Craig Becker, and that Senate Republicans have blocked their confirmation in the same way that they blocked the Employee Free Choice Act. Anything that's good for working families, they're against. And so, Mr. President, we need you to appoint them as a recess appointment, even though till now you've said that you will get your nominees confirmed through the Senate. Because of your work in electing them, and then our work in following up and working with them, 141 members of Congress signed that letter to the President. And just days after he received it, he named as recess appointments Mark Becker and Craig Pierce. And along with Wilma Liebman, we now have 3 out of the 4 members of the NLRB who do stand for working families, who will stand with us, who will now take on issues that have been stalled at the NLRB for years and years. Critical issues. I'll mention just one. At CNN, in our broadcast sector, 300 of our members were fired and told they had to reapply for their jobs at CNN, that they had created a new, so-called new company, in quotes. And they then hired less than half of them back. And they then said there's not a majority for the union. 6 years that case has made it through the NLRB. We won at every stage, yet it's on appeal now to the National Board and delayed. And those 300 workers obviously have no justice. And I'm sure we'll win that case when the board now meets on it. But more importantly, we send a message to every employer with the new NLRB that there is some justice even without labor law reform. There is some hope for workers that are organizing and for workers that are trying to bargain, and workers like those 300 at CNN that all of a sudden, like that, had their jobs ripped away from them by an employer who knew that they can get away with anything in this country right now. There are many, many more examples of why this was critical and how it comes back to our political power. And that even though we need to reset, as I like to say, after that January election, and with some of the right-wing activity, including the Tea Party that's sweeping the country, we have to reset because we're going to have to go back to basics, even with some of our own members. Some of our own members who say, why shouldn't they fire teachers in Rhode Island? Why shouldn't they cut public sector jobs in New Jersey? Why do we pay taxes? We work in the private sector. We have to reset even with those members and go back to those 4 key issues and say to those members, 7% of the private sector is organized and has bargaining rights, and only 35% in the public sector, the lowest of any democracy in the world. And if we don't stand together at this critical time and understand that we're fighting for jobs, yes, my own job, but all union jobs, all good jobs. We're fighting for the middle class. If we don't do that, and if we let right-wing media like Fox and right-wing organizations like the Tea Party control our agenda and what we talk about and split up our own ranks, we have no chance to hold the line on our jobs or on our health care or on our retirement or on our future in bargaining and organizing. We can't just do that at the bargaining table. That's what that triangle's about. We have to do it by building a stronger labor movement through organizing, as hard as that may be right now. But most importantly, we have to do it by building the kind of political movement we can build. Every door we knock on, every conversation we have at the workplace, every time we get another volunteer, we're building the kind of political movement that can bring back the middle class, that can bring back hope for our families and for our neighbors and for our children. And the work you're doing here today and over the days and months ahead is absolutely critical, not only for CWA, but for working families. Thank you.